Hey guys, welcome to the BLIP podcast, where we help agents build successful agencies. My name is Josh Berg, and on this episode, I got to talk to Bobby Stocks. That's not actually his real name, but we get into that in the show. So if you don't know Bobby's story, he has super humble beginnings, but over the last 2 years, he's seen his team and his revenues grow like crazy. Today, we discuss how he built and is building his team. But before we get into it, this episode is brought to you by our anti-aggregator, Blue Lion Insurance Partners, or BLIP for short. We're partnering with agents or agency owners in Washington, Oregon, and Arizona. Check out what we're doing at bluelioninsurancepartners.com. And without further delay, here's my conversation with Bobby Stocks.
Hey everybody that listens to this on the podcast or catches later on Facebook. Welcome to the BLIP podcast, where we help agents build successful agencies. If you have not liked or subscribed to the podcast, put a link in the comments. Please make sure you do so. It really helps us out. And you guys, I've got a really special guest for you today, the one and only Bobby Stocks. Bobby, thanks for joining me, man.
Hey, what's going on, Josh? Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know Bobby, he runs a number of digital marketing companies, is co-founder of some software companies that, just the growth of his companies is pretty crazy. This year, they'll finish the year somewhere between 7 to 10 million. See how that ends up. But anyway, so because he's had so much growth, he's really had to figure out how to build a solid team and how to do it fast. So that's our discussion today, is building, basically team building, how to build a solid team, what that looks like. So Bobby, I thought it would be helpful if we could, I'll just pass it over to you, let you kind of give a brief history to people who don't know you of kind of like where you come from and how you got to where you are today.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Yeah. So I actually got into entrepreneurship as like a full-time gig in 2012. And before that, I worked in the restaurant business. So I first started working in restaurants when I was 14, went to culinary school. I was born and raised right outside of Philadelphia, went to culinary school in Philadelphia. And then, bounced around a couple of restaurants, became a head chef at 21, and ran a big high-end country club for close to 10 years up until 2012, when I decided that I was completely miserable working at a restaurant, and that there was, I think like anybody who opens up their own shop, right? You want to be able to make more money. You want to be able to have more freedom. You want control over your life. And, I was tired of punching the clock and, living for the weekend and living for my one, 2-week paid vacation that I got every year, where I went to the same place, which was the Jersey Shore. And
nice.
Got drunk and did the stereotypical Jersey Shore, get drunk, get in a fight, get sunburnt. So yeah,
Never been there.
Yeah, well, it's exactly like the show Jersey Shore. So.
You were shacked up with like 8 different people.
It was like ridiculous. We have like a beach condo with empty kegs everywhere. But anyway, so 2012, I got out of it. Now, I did have some experience, because in the restaurant business, you're managing a lot of people. So I was able to pull that off, looking at what we've done now compared to what I did then. Obviously, I would say that I was making my mistakes in managing people back then, compared
on someone
to
else's dime. Nice.
Yeah, on somebody, which is always the better way to do it.
Right.
Compared to what we've been able to put together over the last number of years. But yeah, so I got into entrepreneurship 2012. I actually sold insurance for a little bit. I was selling life and health insurance. And at the same time, I started a contracting company And I built up a small team with that. And I started to, I think at this phase, I actually started to learn the importance of a team, not from an, because at the country club, it was my team, but I wasn't funding the country club. I wasn't paying for all the inventory. I managed the team, but I didn't have an understanding of everything that was going in the back. So I built the construction company up, which is where I learned digital marketing, just like we all start a business, and then we all realize we need leads, and then we all buy leads, and then we realize that those leads suck. And, it boils down to all right, I got to generate the lead so that I know that at least this is somewhat legit. So construction is the same. It's the same as every other industry, which is how I got into marketing. But we built that team up, and at that point, then I started to understand the whole other layer of just how important it is to have the right people in the right seat, which is that's kind of a quote from a team building book. It's not good enough to have the right people. You actually have to have the right people in the right seat for it to work. Seat meaning role, right person in the right position. And that's, my last job, my last business, I had the right people sometimes. They just weren't in the right role, and I see a lot of people do that. They have a guy who's committed, he's great, he shows up on time, kind of does what he says, but they have him in a role that he can never be great at. And it's it's always hard. You don't want to let go of somebody who's a great person. But if they're in the wrong role, in the wrong seat, you're almost better off having a terrible person who's good at the right seat, and just kind of deal with that. So that company was it burnt me out, and I realized that I was much better. I loved marketing. So that's kind of how I got into that. And over the last 2 years, really, I shut down a construction company in December 2015, and 2016, I said, all right, I'm going to go into marketing, and kind of make this my focus. And we really didn't pick up steam until the end of 2016. But since then to now, I have a couple different companies, and across all those companies, we're somewhere in the mid 20, 25-ish employees at this point. Wow. So it's grown really fast. We've been scaling, scaling is like air to us right now. It's the only thing that we've been doing, which is an entire other topic. But I think that the main fundamental theme attributed to the growth is getting the right people in the right seat. And in our business, we look at seats as 5 pillars. So marketing, sales, delivery, client retention or management, and finances, right? Those are your main 5 seats hierarchy of those seats. Now there's sub seats and subdivisions of each one of those as you get bigger. But those are the 5. And that's what I can say that I always point to the attribute of the growth is getting the right people in those right seats. And specifically filling the right seat that is causing the bottleneck in your business.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to pause on this line, because something I don't think we're ever going to have a segue into that I really want to touch on is, okay, Stocks is not your last name, right? How did you get to be known as Bobby Stocks?
I lost a ton of money in the stock market.
So is this like a pun name, or a big guy tiny? And so guys started kind of calling me Stocks because
all I ever, I mean, I'm the typical igniter entrepreneur. Like I get an idea and I get obsessed with it. It's like why I got so good at Facebook ads and, now like moving on to other things is once I like get really interested in something, I just have an obsessive mind around it. Mm-hmm. And while I was in the restaurant business, like I didn't have a college degree. I was just like really having a hard time grasping how I could do anything else. And I was sitting in a coffee shop in 2008 and I was eavesdropping on these two guys behind me. And the guy was talking about how he was going to hit it big on this stock. And he was going to pay off his house with it. And I'm like listening to him like this. I'm like leaning back. And he's talking about Freddie and Fannie Mae, right? And in 2008, they like plummeted from, I don't know what they were before they dropped. They might have been $40 or $50 stocks. And they plummeted and they were down to like 30 cents. And this guy was saying, I'm going all in on Freddie and Fannie Mae. And it's going to pay off the whole house. So I'm listening to this guy and I'm like, I'm going to do some research. So I go home and I just get sucked into the stock market. And dude,
I cannot, while you're telling the story, I cannot help but picture George Costanza in Seinfeld when he I don't know if you watch that show, but he gets some stock tips. Oh, and it becomes it's hilarious. It's so funny. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So, I mean, the guy is his tip that I eavesdropped on was good. It was a good tip. I bought it. I dropped about like $5,000 in between Freddie and Fannie Mae at, I think it was like 36 cents was my buy point or something like that. And it went up to 130 and I sold out, I think between $1 and $1.10. So at that point I was hooked. I was like, holy shit. Like, I'm like a head chef and I'm making like $60K a year. And I just like totally like tripled my money in like a month. So I was like, this is the ticket right here. And quickly I went from, blue chip stocks and I was looking at the returns on that. And I was like penny stocks.
I dabbled in penny stocks for a little bit too.
Yeah. Oh man. So for 4 years, I was obsessed with penny stocks. I had days where I, would make $25,000, $30,000. And then I had days where I would lose $25,000, $30,000. And I was on all the forums. I had my own chat groups. It was basically like internet marketing, but in the penny stocks. And at the end of it all, like I had like absolutely nothing to show for it. Just like wasted 4 years because I just lost everything.
No, you didn't. You have a name to show for it.
Right. Yeah. So my buddies started calling me stock. My buddies started calling me stocks. I'd show up. They'd be like stocks.
That's so funny.
It just stuck, and everybody. Yeah, I get mail. Like I get physical mail that has that on it. When me and my wife got married, some of her family, her like extended family, thought my last name was Stocks.
That's awesome.
So my mom doesn't mind. She just kind of rolls with it.
That's great. All right. Well, back to the meat here. Okay. So you've had out of necessity to build a team, right? And to hire pretty quickly and to be able to scale and get the right people in the right positions. So like, where do you start? Like, do you just hire someone to help you, or do you start with like a larger vision of the actual team and hire each position? How do you hire somebody? Like, what do you hire for?
So from like a content, like if you were coming at this from, okay, how do I like educate myself? Like I did it very much on the fly. And really for me, it was because I had my own breakthrough about which seat I was best in. Because in my contracting business, even though I wasn't like, I had built that up to the point where I wasn't out building the fence, right? I wasn't loading the truck. I wasn't even selling the job. All I was doing was generating the leads. which is the right seat for me to be in. The right seat for me is marketing and strategy, marketing lead gen strategy, right? But the problem there is that I was still managing all 5 seats. So
Okay.
even though I was just focusing my day-to-day on doing one of those, I was making all the decisions in all the other ones. So I kind of had tricked myself into thinking that I was doing business the right way, and I was building the right business, but I saw myself as the expert in every single one of those, right? So when I went out to the job, I was calling the shots over the foreman, right? So I was a control freak over the process. And so I wasn't really owning what my role in my seat was, right? And in order for me to really own it, I have to hire people that I believe are way better than me in those positions.
I think that's probably the most difficult thing for business owners to do, is because usually the personality type of someone who is going to start a business is kind of like a driven go type personality, and that's somebody who's usually likes to be in control and control everything. And so the thing that's going to help you get to where you want to get to is going against what brought you to where you are at the moment. It's kind of like a catch-22, super difficult.
Right. Yeah. And that's what the problem was, because like subconsciously what I would do is I would end up hiring people that like, if I was really honest with myself looking back on it, were below my skill in that position. Right. And it allowed me to stay in control. But ultimately it became really hard to scale. So, when I got another chance at doing this for the first year, 2016, why it really took us to take off was because I was trying to run a solo operation, right? Like I was like back in this idea of, let me see if I can make like $10,000 a month and I'll just run everything, right? So I'll have no overhead. And the problem is now, because it just, the business looked very different. It was much harder selling for me because I'm much better selling in person, and I was just doing everything. And for me, that's really where it shifted. Was I realized like I am good at marketing, I suck at sales. I hate having to continue, like if I have to continually do the delivery, like above and beyond, like figuring out the system, then I get worn out. I can deal with clients to a certain point. If they start stressing me out, I fire them. Finances, let's not even go there. I don't even pay attention. If I feel like the business needs something, I just buy it. I don't even look at a budget. So I overspend, right? So I just realized I'm doomed currently. Like I looked at my business and was like, I am completely doomed. There is no way that this thing is ever going to, 1, make money, 2, be stable, 3, like give me any kind of satisfaction. And then I just stepped back and I said, where is the problem right now? Right. And my biggest problem at that moment was I could generate leads and I couldn't close. Right. So I started addressing these pillars based off of what was bottlenecking the business. And so, the first guy I hired was a sales guy, which allowed me to then generate more leads. Meaning when I was trying to do the sales, it was like a catch-22 for myself, because if I did a good job at generating leads, then it was just more money I would blow through because I wouldn't close the leads. Yeah. So I would then stop generating, which then doesn't give me any sales or anybody to talk to. And then I would reluctantly go back in and generate more leads and go through all these sales calls and maybe close somebody on follow-up. So it was just this really painful process. Yeah. So once I was like, okay, I know how to generate leads. I don't know how to close. I'm not even going to bother with it. I just went out and I found a sales guy who was willing to take 20% and no base salary. And basically, he was working at another job and he had some free time. And I was like, if I send you these calls, and do you think you could close them? And he was like, yeah, what the hell? Yeah, and then next month we did $30,000.
Wow.
And he wasn't even that good of a sales guy. It was just that I started generating leads like an absolute madman. It was like, because I had no more fear in the back of my mind or that I was like going to blow this, I didn't care. Like I was just like, more leads. Hey, just got another 10 calls. It was like, we were booking like 10, 15 calls a day just through paid traffic. And it was just like bang, 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 bang. And then the next month I looked at his sales numbers and I talked to another guy who was like a more experienced sales guy. And he was like, oh, these sales numbers aren't that great. And then he was like, I'd like to take a crack at it, because he saw the amount of traffic I was then driving, right? So I had some real value at that point. And he stepped in and he just started closing them down. I remember it was like the next day he closed three marketing retainers in one day. And I was like, what? And that was like, like for me to close 3 clients in a month was like a miracle month.
Yeah.
And this dude, so that created the next problem, which was, well, now I got to deliver on all this
fulfillment.
stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, well, I know I can do fulfillment. Like I can handle this for a little bit, but it's going to drive me nuts again. And I'm going to hate the business and I'm going to want to go after a different business model. And next thing you know, I'll be out there trying to do affiliate marketing. And that's when I was like, okay, I need to find somebody who knows how to run ads, right? Just basically somebody to back me up. And that's what I lucked out and I actually found somebody who knew how to run ads, and turns out they were actually even better dealing with clients. So I was able to fill pillars 3 and 4 at that point. And then once we got that process in, I looked at it again and said, okay, where's the gap now? And we had picked up a lot of clients. We were doing well. And I knew that I could turn up I could turn up our lead generation, right? I could add more sales guys, but what our current model looked like is we were still handicapped in delivery, right? So then I pulled the delivery person into client management because they were better at that, and I went out and I got somebody who was really good at systems, right? Because really delivery isn't so much about somebody who can run ads. Delivery is about somebody who knows how to create SOPs, systems and processes that allows you to take something complex, simplify it, and basically turn whatever you're doing into McDonald's.
Yep.
And that's where we went out and got a CTO. And that was basically like the core. Like I look at all the different businesses that I have. We have an ad agency, we have a white label agency, we have 3 different software products, 1 that's on the market, 2 coming to market. We have another like course division that has a half dozen courses. And all of them, we just have these core pieces, and I have the core team that kind of will like move in and out of all of them. But that's basically it. It's like I find the right people in the right place at the right time, right? I guess that would be the third part, at the right time. We didn't add on somebody into finance until the beginning of 2018. That's when we like filled the finance gap. Because at that point it was like we were building the team. Basically, a majority of the money that was coming in was going right back out to OpEx because we're just scaling. When you scale, it's like your OpEx goes way out of control. But that's what was just like, let's just keep going. Let's just keep building. Let's keep getting more clients. Let's keep getting more systems in place. And then really last year is when we brought somebody in who then started going over everything with a fine-tooth comb, creating budgets, using a lot of like profit first principles. Not sticking like 100% to profit first, because profit first is pretty rigid and can be difficult. Like when you're scaling, profit first isn't definitely profit first. I would say is definitely good to bring into place. Like when you're like, okay, we're not going to scale for like the next 6 months.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we brought somebody in, and then we, really put it together in that way to like now we're going back, and the last really year and a half we've just been studying where to increase revenue, where to increase margins, how to do it without having to like create too many new divisions or products or service offerings that have to be built on on a front end, right? So
your overall structure is you just kind of like say, hey, we've got these 5 pillars of need, basically like something's going to fall in one of these 5 pillars. You have people in each of those, and then you just kind of wait until they're overloaded and you hire another person to help in that.
Yeah. I mean, and your best bet is if you get the right person in the right seat, they are just like I'm passionate about marketing. And when you put me in marketing and you just allow me just to do that, I perform at a high level. It's the same thing for everybody else, right? So if I have a sales guy, like I just want my sales guy selling. I don't want him having to do any other stuff. And that's another thing I see a lot of business owners do is they have people that are in the right seat, right person, right seat, but then they have them doing other stuff. I mean, you see this in a lot of big corporations, especially. I just know Wells Fargo kind of does it, where they have like salespeople doing the most absurd things, just like miles of paperwork and like sweeping floors, and they're just trying to. And it just if you can get the right person in the right seat and get them to just focus on doing what comes natural to them. It makes it easier to scale that pillar because they become so passionate about what they're doing that as long as you find another person who's inside that same like disc profile, you can put them directly underneath them and they will just train them up. So all those divisions, like we've even gotten to the point where those divisions will have their own meetings. So like the sales guys, they have their own meetings. I'm not involved in them, right? Like client retention.
Do you have like a manager of the salespeople, or is that something that just comes up to?
Yeah. So ideally, it's always going to be the first right person, right seat, as long as they're passionate, right? You just elevate them up. And then from there, it's like once you get somebody in the mindset of where like they get exactly that their job is this, they're great at this. And we reinforce that the entire time. Like when somebody comes into that, usually they are trying to do other stuff. And we're just like, no, like you're just going to do this. And they'll be like, hey, do you need help with that? And I'm like, no, you're just going to do this. Because if you just do this, then I can just do this and it'll work better. But they really like once they get that, it's like they're able to transmit that to somebody that's like them, right? So they're able to just take over the division. That's kind of how we've had it. We haven't had to like make a ton of changes. Of course, over the last number of years, like we've had to replace some people and realize some people were like right person, not really right seat, or right person. They were in the right or maybe wrong person at that time in the right seat, So, but typically it's actually been pretty smooth. And the question that everybody always says, where do you find these?
Yeah, that's my question. Where do you find the right people, right?
Right. So I'm a little like woo spiritual about that one because most of the right people have what I feel like come to me. And I think that's just, I think it's because of how committed we are to the idea of the right person in the right seat and not having them do like a bunch of other bullshit. Because it creates an environment where everybody's like really committed and passionate about what they're working on. But I mean, one thing I will say is that as entrepreneurs, like I do believe there's a huge section of people trying to be entrepreneurs that aren't. Like they would be like way happier if they were just put in the right seat inside of a company that has like a very collaborative atmosphere to it. So like we have a lot of entrepreneurs that work on the team. And the benefit is that there's a team of super like A players that are hyper passionate about what they do. And some of them have side hustles or this, that, and the other. And everybody's just kind of like focused on a big goal. And that just, for some reason for us, that just attracts people that like really know what the fuck they're doing.
This is a PG podcast. Oh, you're
sorry.
good, dude, but just yeah, for the future. I didn't mention it yet. Sorry for all you 12-year-olds that are listening.
Excuse my language.
But
yeah, I mean, I think from a founder standpoint, it's you have to. I should say, nobody has to do anything. Should say I have to celebrate the wins that my team gets. Right, without them, completely, I'm back to being broke, confused, and can't close a deal.
Yeah. So you're saying you celebrate those wins like with them, for them.
Yeah.
Not just like celebrate them personally, right?
Yeah. Like the 2 Comma Club award that we just won, you know, I loaded up the whole team on that one. The copywriter, the guy who built the funnel, all that. You know, and I think for founders, it's always kind of, it's that like internal, there's a couple things that happen. Like there's the fear that like somebody's going to steal that person from you, right? If people know this person and I'm constantly saying, oh, so-and-so is great because they did this, and look, you know, is somebody going to poach him? And that is a real fear. And, you know, I've had team members that have been approached and offered money to leave and they haven't. And they've come and told me, like, guess who just offered me this much? And that's like, every time that fear comes up for me, like I always have to check myself and say, like, if I'm not going to celebrate somebody doing a really excellent job and shine the light on them and make sure that the world knows how good they are at their role, like, am I actually being a good steward? Right? Yeah. Like I'm not. I'm being selfish and self-centered, right? And I'm trying to take all the credit to myself. And the funny thing that happens is like people, like I have the fear, like, okay, if I speak up, I could lose them. But the reality is, if I don't speak up, I will lose them. Right? Yeah. It's going to happen. Yeah. So and I think that's like. Go ahead. I was just going to say, like, it's like if there was like a culture, that would be like, I would say that's the culture.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to kind of ask is like, so aside from giving people praise and recognition, is there other things that you specifically do or ways that you try to foster a certain environment or anything like that? Or do you just be you and let everyone be themselves?
Yeah, I mean, we'll do like, you know, we'll do we do a lot of team meetings. We do a lot of sidebar meetings with divisions. We do a lot of team meetings. But it is kind of just like, I mean, I try to set the tone of the culture. If I mess up, own it in front of everybody. And I tell them that how I dropped the ball and how it affected them. You know, that's how I try to set the tone of the culture. And like team meetups are huge. Like we just did one in Tahoe a couple months ago, and those things, the team little workations are always game changers for us.
Yeah. Cool. I wanted to also ask you, okay, so pertaining to this is kind of a side step of what we've been talking about, but pertaining to the businesses that you have currently, is that something, it seems like maybe there's been a shift in that. So I was going to ask you, do you brainstorm business ideas, or do you kind of just let them come naturally and try to say oh, this isn't available, done very well anywhere, let's do this? Or do you actually brainstorm those ideas?
I would say it's definitely a combination of it. Typically, what I think all solid business ideas come from there being a problem that needs to be fixed. Yeah. Right. And they say the bigger the problem, the bigger the money. But just in your day to day, in any business that you're doing, I would say the most successful businesses, they're operating, they have problems happening, whether it's customer problems or, cost per acquisition problems or whatever it may be. And I just think there's two teams, right? There's the team that's losing, which is all the business owners that have problems come up and they want to blame customers. They want to blame vendors. They want to blame the marketplace. They want to blame the economy or whatever. It's anything other than them saying that they can shift, right? And then there's the companies that are winning, that when they get negative feedback or something shifts, they say, okay, where do we need to shift? What do we need to fix? Is there a quick fix to it out in the marketplace? If there's not a fix in the marketplace, well, great. This is a great opportunity because we need to fix this. So let's solve the problem for ourselves and then also sell the solution to everybody else who's been avoiding solving the problem. And that's basically just the simplistic path that we've went down. And it branches off, and once that starts to happen, where we do sit down and brainstorm business ideas that aren't happening organically out of problems that are coming up are around profit margin, right? And this has been specifically the last 4 or 5 months. This is really what I've started to become obsessed with, which is how to create more profit margin without spending money to acquire clients, right? Or customers or whatever it is, because your highest expense is acquiring clients, right? And, the age-old saying, he who can spend the most to acquire a client wins. Well, the reason why they say that is because that's not true. It's only true if you have a very deep back-end funnel. So we've really been looking at all of our businesses and saying, what can we add on to this that requires very little output that can make more money? Whether it's an affiliate deal that we can plug in, or it's a new type of product that we can build. And we've been looking at all of our systems like that, trying to figure out whether it's referral partners. And that's really been interesting. And the more I've talked to uber successful businesses, the more I've realized that most of these really, really big businesses, especially once you get over $50, $100 million, is that all of their revenue, all their high margin profit is actually not coming from the front end business. What they're selling isn't what's actually making them the majority of the money. They're typically just doing this to acquire. For instance, Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola all they do is sell syrup. That's it. They sell a license to use their syrup. There's a bunch of companies like that most people would never realize that they are not what they advertise themselves as, because they've optimized where their profit margins and their highest margins come from.
Are you talking about Coca-Cola selling syrup to restaurants?
So I mean, Coca-Cola in general, like they're not like a production, like they're not like sending out millions of bottles of Coke like most people think they are. They're just selling their syrup. That's it. And licensing it all. That's why when you go to different countries, Coke tastes different, because they're always just selling the license to bottling factories. And because they realize that shipping bottles and selling bottles is not actually that profitable. What's profitable is them just being a marketing company and then selling the license to a formula of syrup. So we've really started to become really obsessed with, how do we take the profit channels? Because we're spending money to acquire clients, right? We're all spending money or we're spending time to get clients in. And obviously in insurance, we all know we want to sell a client on something and then cross-sell them everything else, right? Because that's where all your money comes from. So the same idea, but I would say, just like everything else, most business owners we get in such a tunnel vision of like, how do I acquire that next client? Yeah. That we forget to look at, well, how do I actually set up a system on the back end where every client I acquire makes me 3, 5, 10x profit on the back end without having to spend any more money.
Nice. Sorry, I kind of totally sidestepped on that one, but
That's
I was curious because I know that there's been. I was kind of hoping you would answer that way, or I kind of expected you to answer that way at the beginning, because I've seen other people who have been in your courses and how they've handled things, like kind of the way you have done it, where you see an issue or some sort of possible, not complaint, but objection somebody might have, and just overcoming that in advance, so taking it off the table. And it's been really cool. So anyway, I learned that directly from a guy who does $100 million a year. I was sitting with him in North Carolina, and he said, Bob, problems are money. The more problems, the more money I make. And I was like, whoa, this guy just flipped the script, because every other business owner I ever met is spending their entire day trying to avoid problems, right? They're just trying to like shut the problems out. They're looking for a business that has no problems. Meanwhile, this guy's crushing it, and he's attacking the problems because he realizes how big the opportunities are. Yeah. Nice. Dude, anything else you want to add on team building or building a team, anything like that?
I don't know. It's like, for me, it's just follow your gut, and hire. I would say follow your gut. Like, people that I hire, I go by my gut. Like, I make sure that they're hungry. I like hiring people that have like, kind of like, they've been through some shit. Excuse me. Sorry. Yeah. They've been through some stuff, right? Like, they have some life experience, and I hire through my gut, and I make sure, like, if I'm afraid, if this person is like too advanced for me, or too like, man, they're like way too good for, like, if I have a sense that like I guess what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe I'm intimidated by them, then that's like a really good sign I should hire them.
Yeah.
Right? Because you do, like, it's like, if you can get yourself in a position where like most of the people in your company are smarter than you, you're doing a really good job.
Nice. Awesome. Dude, well, thank you so much for joining me. I totally appreciate your time.
Awesome.
All right, man. Take care. Thanks everyone for listening.